Good afternoon, this is Peter Towers from ESS BIZTOOLS. Welcome to this webinar on ESS BIZGrants. If you have any questions, can you, during the webinar, can you type the question in, and in webinar terminology, raise your hand, and I will answer the questions during the webinar. If you think of some questions later on, please don't hesitate to send us an email, peter@essbiztools.com.au. So this webinar is on ESS BIZGrants. We're at the very beginning of the ESS BIZGrants website at present. There's an interesting testimonial there from David Smith, one of the most knowledgeable accountants in Australia when it comes to technologies. David Smith was the person who encouraged us to write a government grant program that accountants could use to assist accountants to identify grants that small medium enterprises might be eligible for, because he found that there was a lot of disquiet amongst small medium enterprise operators that he was interviewing, that they were not being kept abreast of government grants that were available, and they were not getting that information from their accountants. So that's the reason we have that information there. On our site there are some case studies that you can look at in the non-subscribers situation, and there's some recorded webinars and videos that you can view if you wish, which will show you how the system works. The subscription price is $450. I didn't mean to show you that at this stage. I was looking for we'll start our search. I've already logged in. I was trying to log in again, but I've already done that earlier today. There's a summary there to give you some details as to how this system works, but I think the easiest way is to show you. We'll go first of all to a grant summary. So if you're looking to find out some details about a grant, you just click onto the name of the grant, and there's a synopsis then of what this grant's all about. There's about 8 different apprenticeship grants, so they all come up. You've got both state and federal grants that are coming up in this process, and obviously these are the grants that the system's going through and looking at. These clean technology grants, whilst they're still in existence, they're not able to process any applications at present, because the new government has basically announced that they're looking very closely at the clean technology grants, and it's suspected that they're going to close those grants down. But and that also applies to these clever green grants. So we've still got them in the system because they're still out there, but they're really not processing applications until they get a clear ruling from the government. Continuous Improvement Program is a Enterprise Connect grant. It's for people who have already participated in a tailored assistance program, which is the Enterprise Connect's first round of funding, if you like. A business can go back to Enterprise Connect within 12 months of completing the tailored assistance program and apply for some funding to undertake some further work. the prerequisite requirement is that the business must have implemented the strategies which were identified in the Tailored Assistance Program before they're going to be eligible to be admitted to the Continuous Improvement Program. Now, you'll see that this was for the resources industry, mining, oil and gas. Enterprise Connect have grant assistance available for 12 different industry groups, and at times there can be some overlap as to which industry group a business might actually be part of. Doesn't really matter as long as they're eligible for one. If you want to look at early stage commercialisation grant, which is the big grant from Commercialisation Australia, it can be up to $2 million on a 50% basis. There's a brief synopsis as to what's the key items of that grant are all about. To apply for that grant, the company must have developed a new product, process or service and be looking for assistance to bring that product to market. Commercialisation Australia only supports companies prior to their first commercial sale, so it's covering the period from the time someone's identified a product, they've done the preliminary work on it, they've done some preliminary market testing, they've got some feedback from some focus groups that there's some interest in the product in the market, but they haven't yet developed the product to the stage where it is commercially able to be sold, where there is assistance under the Commercialisation Australia program for that type of situation. So that's a bit of an overview of what's in here in grants. Obviously you can work your way through all of these, but if we go back now and we will go into a client profile. I'll show you a blank one to start with. So when we start, we have a client profile. You can insert the name of your client, or if you wish you can use a number because we are using cloud technology. You need to identify, let's move that up a bit, you need to identify what structure the entity is. All of these entities can obtain some government grants, but the most popular entity is a company. I don't know of any grants that don't apply to a company, but there are plenty of grants that don't apply to some of these other corporate structures. We want to know whether the business exports, because that's going to identify some export grants. We want to know whether they import, because there's some specific grants. The number of employees is important in some grants, particularly state and territory grants. There are minimum and maximum numbers of employees that are mentioned. If the applicant does not have an Australian business number, they will not be successful in trying to find a grant using this package, because within ESS BIZGrants we are only targeting small, medium enterprises, and for any of those types of businesses, irrespective of their corporate structure, they need to have an Australian business number. The years that the business has been operating is important for a number of grants. Enterprise Connect, which I mentioned just earlier, which is arguably the largest number of individual grants issued in Australia each year, has a requirement that the business must have been operating for 3 years. And there are a number of the state and territory grants that have a requirement that the business needs to have been in operation for 2 or 3 years, depending on individual grants. Turnover is also very important. there are some minimum turnovers. Enterprise Connect has a range of minimum turnovers that can range from $750,000 to $1 million to $1.5 million. There are some upper limit turnover figures like research and development. There is a change in the type of incentive that's available at $20 million and so on. So turnover can be very important. Expenditure is a potential issue to help someone obtain a grant in Enterprise Connect. They have this concept of allowing an entrant, if they achieve an expenditure figure equivalent to the amount which normally we state as being the turnover figure. So a manufacturing business can be eligible if they have expenditure of $1.5 million or turnover of $1.5 million. You might ask how they could have a turnover of $1.5 million and say, sorry, I'll rephrase that. They might have a expenditure of $1.5 million and very little, indeed might not have any turnover. This would relate where they've spent a lot of money on research and development, patent costs, pilot plant construction, things of that nature. It's fairly rare, and in fact in our next version of ESS BIZGrants, which we're planning to release by the end of March, we're not going to be highlighting the expenditure item as much as what we've done in this version, because we found out there's a very small number of applicants who apply for Enterprise Connect based on the expenditure rules. So it's probably not worth as much emphasis as asking people to insert the annual expenditure of their business. Are you registered for GST? It's a bit like the ABN question. Businesses need to be registered for GST to obtain a government grant. So if you answer no to that question, you won't be shown any grants in this system. Are you tax exempt? It's virtually the same answer. If people answer yes, they won't be shown grants because this product is for businesses, irrespective of how they're structured. Are you involved in research and development? We want to know that because research and development obviously opens up the research and development tax incentives, but it also is the trigger for looking at Commercialisation Australia, which have those grants to assist people who have developed new products or technology. And if there's concerns about the financial vulnerability, if you answer yes to that, you won't be shown grants because that's the reaction of the government department. But you wouldn't answer yes to that for the business being a bit concerned about its debtors' days outstanding, for argument's sake. It's really a question that most of the government grants now ask, but they're only really concerned if the liquidators are about to be appointed. Now, we can't go any further unless we answer that, so before we started this webinar today, I did go in and created one, started two, so, I thought I did. Well, we'll start one. We'll start a new one, so we'll start completing this. If we call the business Wanderers Building, well, there it is there. I did start doing it. I've decided it's a company. Could have looked at all the others, but we've selected a company. We're saying this business does do some exporting. They make some portable buildings, and they do import, so we'll say that they're an importer. I decided before they had 20 employees. They have an ABN. They've been in operation for 15 years. Their annual turnover, I think I had 7,600,000. That'll do. And we'll say that they've got costs of 7,350,000. They're registered for GST. They're not tax exempt. will say they're involved in research and development, and there's no concerns about their financial vulnerability. So that's the basic questions you have to answer. The next one we go to, we have to insert their address. There's the address I picked, 1210 Black Street, and we said that was in Blacktown, obviously in New South Wales, and if my memory serves me correctly, the postcode's 2165. So we'll save that. Now, when that comes up, we have the opportunity of inserting some additional addresses. So if you have a client that's operating from, say, a city office in Sydney or Melbourne and has operations in regional areas, you can then enter some additional locations, because you might find that in one of their regional locations they might be eligible for a grant, whereas in the city area where they're normally located they might not be. The next item you need to go to is this summary here. So there's just a summary of what we've put in about Wanderers Building Company. Their address is what we said there. Now the system's identified that that address is in the major cities of Australia. There's the financial details that we've inserted. The big question we've now got to answer is their industry details. So under the Australian New Zealand industrial classifications, we can pick the industries that they relate to. This is a builder, so it's going to be under a service provider, and we then need to select industry. You've got these industries, the 17 of them under the Australian New Zealand industrial classifications. We're going to say they're a builder, so they're in the construction industry. We're going to add that to the system. We could have selected another industry if we wanted to, but we've identified that one, and that will do for the purpose of what we need to show today. So we've now, that is the basic information you need to enter for your client. Our suggestion is you do this for every one of your business clients in your firm, and then have a look at what comes out in the report. So under the pending area, we've identified there's 30 potential grants. Now, don't get too excited, don't let your clients see this and get too excited, because there are some double ups. There's a number of apprenticeship grants. So if we said, okay, we're interested in a mature age worker, you'd click onto it, and what you then get is a profile as to how the mature aged worker grants work. The funding details are there. If you wanted to read a bit more about it, you can go to what we call the grant toolkit, and you can bring up the paper on apprenticeship. So there's the paper out of ESS BIZTOOLS on how the Australian Apprenticeship Scheme operates. So you might want to look at that for your client. So you're interested at this stage. You've then got to answer some additional criteria questions. Now, this is a pretty easy one. There's only one question. In some of our grants, unfortunately, there might be 6 or 7 questions. But you need to answer this to go any further. So is the employer proposing to employ a person aged 45 years or over? And they're going to do a certificate 2, 3, 4. If we say yes, what has now happened is that the system has shown up here that you're potentially eligible, and it's also put in this new box which says apply now. So when you click apply now, you get a new URL, and if I clicked on that, that would take me to the Australian Apprenticeship information page. In the other grants, it will take you direct to the grant application page of the various government departments. The purpose of that is so you can have a read of what the application process requirements are, to get a feel for what sort of information that particular department is seeking. You don't have to complete it now. You can say, okay, we'll now go back to results. Now within results now, if we click on potentially eligible, we have this one grant that we've looked at. Potentially ineligible, we got nothing yet because we haven't looked at any of the others. So if we keep on, and I'm just going to browse through this and just pick a couple of grants just to show you. The Australian Bureau of Statistics, that information's all free since Mr. Costello, when he was Treasurer, made it free about 8-9 years ago. There's some very good information there, and small businesses, I think, can really get some good data there to look at in their businesses. Some of these grants are New South Wales or Queensland only. That's the Australian Technology Showcase. Now this business, I mentioned the Continuous Improvement Program before. There's the Continuous Improvement Program. This is assuming that if you want to apply for this one, that this company has already been through the Tailored Advisory Service. So let's have a look at the funding details. So the funding details of this business could get up to $20,000 on a 50% basis. If you want to have a look at the grant toolkit, you can access the paper which discusses the Enterprise Connect Continuous Improvement Program. So you could look at that, and you see there's a whole range of other Enterprise Connect programs in a wide range of industries. Very popular grant this. Some accountants are doing quite well out of it because they're not only earning the brownie points from their clients in introducing them to these grants, but they're then doing a fair bit of the work that has to be done or can be done with the government's funding. So that's the grant program. We then look at some additional criteria. So has the company completed stage 1? So we're saying they have completed stage 1, so we answer yes. Has the company demonstrated progress in addressing the elements raised in stage 1? Now if I answered no to that, the system will immediately tell us we would be ineligible because we needed to have said that we have demonstrated significant progress. But we then realise we've made a mistake, so we go back and hit yes. The system was now changed, the answer, and said you're probably going to be eligible. We could apply now. So if we hit apply there now, that's going to take us to the Enterprise Connect website. And if we want to go back to results and look at potentially eligible, we've now got 2 grants in there. We go back to pending, and let's find another interesting one. Now you'll see that there's defence industry coming up. This business we nominated has been in the construction industry, but it could have been doing work in some of these other industries. So there were a number of industry classifications that this Wanderers Building Company could have applied to Enterprise Connect for some financial support on. Let's have a look at Export Market Development Grant, because we said they were an exporter when we entered the profile. So there's a brief summary of the Export Market Development Grant. There's the details of the funding. Businesses can secure up to $150,000 to reimburse 50% of their eligible export market expenditure. We go to Grant Toolkit. We might not look at the paper this time. We'll have a look at the eligible expenditure, because there are 14 different classifications that you can claim Export Market Development Grant expenditure under. So there's a checklist which will help you as the accountant sit down and talk to your client to ascertain just what sort of items that they're incurring. So you can see there's some fairly interesting things there. If they send product samples overseas, they can cover the actual material costs of the product sample, the labour, share of their overheads, packaging, freight, insurance. So we go back and say, okay, we're happy there. Let's look at the additional criteria. There's a few more questions here. Have you spent money to seek out, create demand, or develop an export product? Yes. If you're claiming overseas representatives, have you maintained documentary evidence? You need to have done that, so we say yes. If you are claiming expenses under the marketing visit categories, have you maintained full records? We say yes. If you've claimed 2 export market grants in prior years, have you had the discussion with Oz Industry about your export performance? It's the sort of process businesses need to be doing. Will the business spend more than $20,000 in 2012-13? So that's the last year. Or for a first-time applicant for export market development grant, you can in fact have 2 years that become a pro forma 1 year. So we've summarised that. You just got to make sure that export marketing is not including New Zealand, North Korea or Iran. The New Zealanders love that, being bracketed with North Korea and Iran, but we can't help that. And is the business the principal for the export business? So we answer all that yes. The system will now tell us that we are potentially eligible, and we could apply now, which would take us to Austrade's website, or we could go back to results. And if we look at potentially eligible, we've now got those 3 grants. Now that's basically how the system works. You go through, you look at the grant, you decide whether you think your client might be interested in that. There's nothing to say you cannot have your client there and work through each of those 30 items, but some of them are duplicates, and in that you've got a number of variations of apprenticeship grants, and you'll soon get to understand some of those other classifications. At the end of the process, you can produce a report. So the report would be prepared for Wanderers Building Company. It would have your name on there, not ESS BIZTOOLS, your name, and would have a brief synopsis of each of the grants. So you could look at it. So the whole idea is you can table this report to your client, discuss the grants with the client, and seek the client's approval to proceed with the grant application. So that's a summary of the ESS BIZGrants product, the way it works. The subscription is $450 plus GST for a 12 months 24/7 access. If you have any questions, can you please send them to me now and I will answer them. There doesn't seem to be any questions, so I hope you've enjoyed this webinar today. There is a survey form at the end. Appreciate it if you can complete it. Thank you for participating in this webinar. Have a great day. Goodbye.